You are listening to the Auto Riff podcast. Every week, we take a look into the car world. We take a look at our past, our present, and our future in automobiles. And sometimes we just chat cars. Sit back and relax as we slide into your speakers or headphones and talk about what's getting our motors revving this week. Hello and welcome to the Auto Riff. Well, I teased it in episode 14 with New Me, but I'm going to do it. No distractions. We are learning about the Chevy Nova, and you can't stop me. The first Chevy 2, or the Nova, was designed in quite the rush by Chevrolet designer Claire McKitchen. He said of the project, quote, "There was no time for experimentation or doodling around with new ideas from either the engineers or from us in the design, and it had to be a basic type car. I think that was the quickest program we ever did at any time. We worked night and day on that car, and it didn't take very long to run it through our shop because we had a deadline." End quote. It took just over 18 months from design to fruition, and the Nova is one of the fastest developed cars in GM history. The Chevy 2 Nova was designed as an economy car to take on the wildly popular Ford Falcon at that time, and was built on the X-Body platform, which was all new at the time and would later be shared with other cars such as the Buick Apollo and Skylark, the Oldsmobile Omega, and Pontiac Ventura and Phoenix. Interesting tidbit about the X-Body. So, if you actually spell out some of the vehicles that use the X-Body, such so you have the Nova, the Omega, the Ventura, and the Apollo, those cars actually spell out Nova, which is interesting, right? So the Nova distinction was actually held for the top-of-the-line Chevy 2 Nova 400. There were different levels. There was the 100, 200, 300, 400, and obviously you started at 100. It was a four-cylinder and moved up through the range. The Nova, or Chevy 2, was built in Willow Run, Michigan, alongside the Corvair, another but very different compact car at that time. The Nova was of unibody construction, which was fairly new at that time, and was available initially as a two-door coupe, a two-door sedan, a four-door sedan, a two-seat station wagon, a three-seat station wagon, and finally a convertible, and was available with two engine options, a 153 cubic inch four-cylinder and a 194 cubic inch six-cylinder. The Nova was actually designed to be the antithesis of the Corvair. It was designed to be as basic as possible, whereas the Corvair was built with an air-cooled engine that was mounted in the rear, which at the time was actually built to be more of a Volkswagen Beetle competitor. The first Chevy 2 was actually the first Chevrolet since 1928 to come equipped with a four-cylinder engine, which is very interesting to hear. Now, the first Nova SS, the one most of us probably think of when we think of the Nova, was introduced in 1963, but not as a V8, not yet. It was a six-cylinder with an appearance package. But in 1964, the V8 came roaring in with a 283 cubic inch V8 making 195 horsepower. Hold on, did I read that right? Yes, 195 horsepower. Respectable today if it were a four-cylinder, but okay. In 1964, it still wasn't the tire burner that we think of. 1965 brought slightly new styling, and finally, the 327 cubic inch motor putting out 300 horsepower. There it is. 1965, mark it down, is the year that the little Chevy 2 became a muscle car. That year, the 283 cubic inch motor was also sported 220 horsepower. Better for a small car. I find it interesting that as I'm telling the story, that it was almost like Chevy had this idea of the car being a compact economy car. Then they were like, hey, let's slip in a bit bigger motor into it. Okay, a bit bigger. Okay, now this one. And it was like, at what point did they finally go, okay, this isn't really an economy car anymore? If you think about economy cars today, in general, there is still a war to get more horsepower, but they add turbos or direct injection or NOS stickers if you watch Fast and Furious. Sorry, I had to get that in there. But it's almost like there's a competition to see who can get the most horsepower out of the smallest engine possible. Very different times. Back then it was bigger, bigger, bigger. Not complaining, of course, that time period gave us some amazing cars. And I know most car enthusiasts wouldn't take back that time for anything. I wish I had been lucky enough, honestly, to live through it, because I can only imagine today, if I see a Nova on the street or a Chevelle, it's a special time. But there was a time in history where they were just probably everywhere. Everyone, not everyone had a muscle car. Obviously, there were still Impalas and Cadillacs and stuff like that out there, but still. So 1966 brought new styling and the second generation, and more engines and more power. Now, with the laundry list of other engine choices, the four-cylinder making 90 horsepower, the 194 cubic inch inline six, there's a 230 inch inline six, a 283 cubic inch V8, and a 327 cubic inch V8, and now you had another 327 cubic inch turbo fire V8 making 350 unibody twisting horsepower. Ho, 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 ho. That was my Tim Taylor grunt, guys. I'm sorry if that's trademarked. So 1967 brought slightly updated styling. Kinda. It had a new hatching on the grille. 1967 models did, however, carry significant improvements in the area of safety equipment. It had a government-mandated energy-absorbing steering column and safety steering wheel, soft interior parts such as armrests and sun visors, recessed instrument panel knobs, front seat belt anchors, and dual brake master cylinders were included in the 1967 models. So yeah, there was that. 1968 brought a whole new design. 2 years is basically nothing in a generation of a car. 66-67 is considered a second generation. It was almost like they designed the second generation, then went, oh crap, do-over. But they didn't have time to pull it out. So they just quickly designed another car. The 1968 car had a longer wheelbase at 111 inches and was now only 1 inch shorter in that respect than the mid-size Chevelle. What I haven't been saying is that the Nova sales had been basically declining a little every year since after it had been introduced, and the introduction of the Camaro certainly hurt it. But being 1 inch shorter than the Chevelle had to have not helped either, right? Chevy or GM seemed to have designed a lot of cars back then and put them all way too close in size and barely made them distinguishable. But if I could just have a hot take for a second. Just a second. I kind of think they're doing the same thing with SUVs right now. And I'm just going Chevy specific here. If you go right now, pause the podcast, go to the Chevy website and look at their SUVs. And you look at how close they are in size and in price, it seems kind of silly. For instance, and this is just in Canada, I don't know the US, they have the Trax, the Trailblazer, the Equinox, the Traverse, the Blazer, the Tahoe, and Suburban. Again, that's in Canada. The US could have the, who knows, I don't know, whatever. But seriously, Chevy, lighten up on the SUVs. The Trailblazer and Blazer, I'm almost positive, were brought back purely for nostalgic reasons, just to have the nameplate brought back. And if retro is back in style, where is the new Nova? You keep killing off cars, but we don't get a new Nova. If you think about it, you had the Nova at one point, and then you had your Cavalier, then you had the Cobalt, then you had the Cruise. Any one of those could have been the Nova. Okay, hot takeover, sorry. So 1968 was the year that the SS package went from an appearance package to a performance package. Up until this point, the SS was generally equipped with an inline-six engine, but not anymore. You got a heavy-duty suspension and your choice of 396 cubic inch big block, making either 350 or 375 horsepower. Now we're talking. Finally, in 1969, we said goodbye to the Chevy 2 name. It was finally called the Nova, as it should have been all along. Seriously, the Chevy 2, it basically suggests to you right in the name that it was poop, or that it would lag behind the Falcon in sales, which it did. So smart move calling it the Nova. Weirdly, side note, Nova in Spanish means not going. I don't know. Anyways, though, the 1969 model got new vents and had standard disc brakes. And one of the engines gained 5 horsepower with a new carburetor. Yeah. In 1970, the side marker lenses were placed slightly different, gaining the car an astounding 50 horsepower. I'm kidding. The car was basically a carryover. And if I'm honest, I want to stop the story here, because the government regulations took over and then the car started to lose power and all the excitement was gone. But the show must go on. In 1971, the 396 was dropped and the 300, not on somebody's foot. I know what you're thinking. It was dropped. What? Where did they put it? No, they got rid of the 396 and they put it in the 350 cubic inch motor back as the top dog motor. And then the all-new Chevy Vega stole sales that year from the Nova. Again, another small car when you already have a small car Chevy. Apparently they had a fetish for cannibalizing their own sales. In 1972, the SS350 now only made 200 horsepower and was available with a sliding fabric sunroof known as the Sky Roof. I looked at it. It was like pretending to be a convertible. But it was probably pretty cool back then. I'm sure it leaked a lot. If anyone out there has a Nova with a Sky Roof, you get in touch with me and tell me, does it leak? Because I just have this feeling that, yeah, it probably does. The Sky Roof was only available through 1973, coincidentally, and then it was discontinued. And in 1975, the car was redesigned and brought in with a new 262 cubic inch V8, which lasted all the way until 1976, the very next year, when it was replaced by a 305 cubic inch V8. And also that year was the last year of the Super Sport, which again at that point had become an appearance package and not really a performance package. And that generation of Nova lasted until 1979, when the car was finally discontinued. Obviously, after that car came the 84 Nova, which we kind of covered in the New Me episode, as that car is what led me to the New Me episode. So if you want to know more about that, and I encourage you to do so, go back and listen to that episode, or watch it on YouTube. It's also there. But suffice to say, it was a Toyota Corolla. Any story about the Nova would not be complete if we didn't mention some of the special edition Novas that came from the COPO, or Central Office Production Order, from Chevrolet. Dealerships like Yanko Chevrolet in Pennsylvania used a special ordering system to build cars and trucks that would not otherwise be built straight from the factory, and a few of them fitted the Nova with the 427 cubic inch V8, putting out an astonishing 450 horsepower. Very few of those cars were ever built, and only by a handful of actual dealerships. So that's the story of the Nova. If you have any other things you want to talk about, I know there's probably a hidden history out there of Nova. I couldn't find much. I had a hard time finding the designer name of the original Nova, and beyond that, a lot of numbers. I know I've tried to make this as interesting as possible. From a backstory standpoint, it's not super interesting. But again, I'm sure there's something interesting out there. If you know anything, please email me. Please reach out on the interwebs and let me know. Thanks again for listening to the Auto Riff. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, or you can email us at theautoriff@gmail.com. Without you, the listener, I'd just be a crazy person talking about cars to myself. I appreciate the support and the conversations with my listeners that this provides. Until next time, everyone drive safe and have a great week.